Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, where Shelly and I have conversations with creatives about their mental health journeys. Please note, we're not licensed practitioners or therapists, but just actors and filmmakers who are deeply interested in sharing our own struggles and exploring the mental health of others. Our hope is that these episodes and conversations bring you joy, some personal understanding, and some tools so that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. So excited to have you here today. As you can see, unfortunately, it is just me today, but we have a super incredible guest who is going to be joining us today. Brianna Brown Keen is an actress and a producer. You may have seen her in Devious Maids, General Hospital, Dynasty, and many other titles. She is someone who I personally work with as a bit of a mentorship life coach kind of situation. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to have her on the podcast is that she has some of the best and most actionable tools when it comes to figuring out what's going on in your life, breaking down your patterns and, what isn't working for you and figuring out exactly how to make your current circumstance work for you instead of against you. So she's definitely someone who believes that everything happens in life for a reason. And I know that so many times when we are, going through the shit in our lives, it's really hard to see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And she really is this light. I find her very valuable. And I think that listening to this episode, you will find valuable and you'll certainly walk away with some actionable steps for yourself. On that note, if you walked away from something actionable from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Please reach out to us on social media. We are on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts, but you can reach us in many different ways. All of those links are in the show description, and we really do love to hear from our listeners. So, without further ado, let's dive right into Brianna Brown Keen. Hi, Brianna. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Good. I like to start with always asking people to reflect on that question and answer again, how are you actually doing? And you're welcome to say, I am great. Or if you want to share more, you're welcome to share more.
Hmm. I am great. And I'm just tired because it's been a lot. It's been a lot the last few days.
Yeah.
So I'm just a little like, I need a third cup of coffee. No, I don't
Yeah.
need that.
Well, I'm excited to have you. We've got a little bit of a series going on the podcast right now, which is we had a couple episodes ago, we had Vivian Lyra Blair, who is young Leia on Obi-Wan. And
Oh,
then our last guest episode was Matthew Shively, who is actually someone I went to high school with, but he started on True Jackson, and then his last thing was he was on The Real O'Neills for 5 seasons. So both of them are like child actors. Matt is no longer a child, Viv is. But you also moved here when you were 19. Is that
yeah.
correct? Moved to LA to be an actor. And so I would love to start with that because a recurring theme that we talked about a lot with both of those guests is the fact that being an actor in your formative years and constantly changing who you are and who you work with and putting yourself in different environments, putting on different masks in order to interpret these different characters. I would love to hear how that was for you and how that then influenced your 20s being in LA for the first 10 years.
Well, I think like whatever your upbringing is what you know, right? So
Yeah,
it doesn't seem odd if that's what you know. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not also difficult.
for
Because
sure.
this industry in general, the entertainment industry, is just a challenging industry, period, for
For
different
sure.
things. When things are great, it has its challenges.
Yeah.
So even when you're working a ton, even when you're, it's all of it all has its challenges. I think there's two things to that question because one, it can be the like, oh, that was really hard. And I
Hmm.
tend to look at the like, well, it made me very adaptable. Like I meet a lot of
Yeah.
people who are older who are not as adaptable as I am, and they're not as resilient or have as much tenacity. So I
Hmm.
think those are like the bonuses, but
For sure.
to look at what it was like back then, I mean, I think, we're in an interesting time where identity is super in vogue to talk about and stamp and say, this is who I am. And it's like, I'm so grateful that I didn't feel the need to have to label who I am at a young age
Hmm.
before my before my prefrontal cortex
Prefrontal cortex.
developed,
Yeah.
my prefrontal cortex was developed,
Yeah.
because I think you don't have a clue who that you are until you are, I mean, minimally 25, because that's when
Yeah.
this brain fully develops.
I'm
So
curious, just I want to pause really. What does identity mean to you?
well, I'm just saying now everything's identity. I identify as this, or I identify as that, or
Mm,
instead of like, maybe you're experimenting, or maybe you're going through a phase, or maybe you don't know and you just tried something new because you never were exposed to that before. Do you know what I mean? Like, you
interesting.
can't possibly be exposed to everything at a young age, let alone in 25 years. You don't know unless you have traveled all over the world constantly, and like, so how can you possibly know and set a this is my identity? And so
For
I think
sure.
for anyone, and I think for actors, they get to explore different parts of their psychology at a younger age. Because if you're good, you are getting into script analysis, you're learning, you're seeing life from different perspectives. Whereas if you're an accountant, let's say, which is great, your focus is on numbers, and it's just a different focus. So
For sure.
I think when you're younger, and I know a lot of people who are older actresses as well, who, you're trying to get the job, or am I doing it right? And now it's different because you're not even meeting people. It's all virtual. But
Right.
which I think has its pros in that regard, but you're not seeing your competition day in, day out staring at
Right.
you, 30 versions of you. So I think, it was an interesting time to just try to figure out, A, who am I? Even though I came from the Midwest, I didn't hold a lot of, like, I held a lot of those values, but also I didn't hold a lot of the things of it all needs to look like this. Right? Like a
Right.
family needs to look like this. You start a family by this age. It all kind of there's just a certain expectation of when everything happens. That felt very limited to me because I wanted to go and do more things. But I
Hmm.
think as an actor, jumping from character to character, audition to audition was a little crazy, but I also was auditioning 3, 5 times a day.
Mm.
So
Oh,
I was
imagine that.
driving around to rooms, going into a room, changing in my car, going into another room, and then being on set. And when you're young and you're new and you're green and you're not confident because you don't have your hours in, you know, people can smell it.
Right.
And so you might not be getting the same sort of warmth and respect as someone who has put in their hours, who is confident, who can crush it, and get a line and, and tweak it in 180, whereas someone else might be flabbergasted by it and not know how to handle it simply due to inexperience. So I think that answers your question. I,
Yeah.
I don't
No,
view
for
it as a
sure.
negative. I actually view it I feel like it was actually a real positive because
Well,
again,
and I think, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is that like you I work with you in a coach mentorship group
yeah,
capacity. And one of the reasons that I wanted to work with you is that you are such a glass half full, everything happens for you instead of to you kind of person. And I
yeah,
think that there's a lot of people out there in that camp, but a lot of times it doesn't feel genuine and it doesn't feel actionable. And I
yeah,
think that you very much do. So I, first of all, want to commend you for the work that you do. But also, I'm curious if you've always had that mentality, where that came from, if you didn't, because I think that like we all have times in our lives where we like look back and are like, oh yeah, all of that lined up the way that it should have, and for reasons unknown, but it all worked. But it's very difficult to have that same level of clarity and belief in oneself looking forward.
yeah.
And that seems to be something that you teach. And so I'd love to just hear the origin of that.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
I think the ace in my back pocket is I have faith.
Mm.
think when you're someone without faith, and faith doesn't mean I'm religious, and
Yeah.
someone can be religious and have faith. And I know people who are religious who really don't have faith. They're
Hmm.
constantly worried. So I think faith in and of itself is believing that there is something more than you, something divine that's helping guide you.
Mm.
Things are working and that you can be led by that. And I've really practiced and honed in on listening to that intuitive voice, to listening to those nudges, to like being guided where things flow, where I have a lot of synchronicity happen to me because of that. And I've had a lot of spiritual moments. So I think it's easy for me to believe all of that when I've had proof repeated to me.
Mm.
And I've had proof repeated when I didn't, and then things went sour. So
Mm.
it's not like in my early 20s, I was like, oh, this is all working out when I was in landmine after landmine. I
Right.
hope we don't shitstorm after shitstorm, you
No,
know?
please.
It was not that at all. But
Yeah.
looking back, I was then able to see it was all lining up, or it didn't line up because of usually me.
Mm.
Resistance, not following through, inconsistency, not being willing to invest in myself, not being willing to like let go,
Hmm.
holding on to something that's like not right. I mean, before we jumped on here, before we jumped on, we started recording, we were talking about, exes. It's like, oh, my ex, I would have been in Australia. And I'm like, oh my God, my ex, he like did dangerous activities. And I was like, as a
Right.
parent, I would have been like, oh my God, like, thank God for unanswered prayers.
For sure.
So, and I think that having that gives me a lightness to move forward because the older I get, the wiser I get, the more that I see the irony of like, interesting, I hurt my back and that led to this.
Mm.
I then had that crappy job where I learned how to fundraise for nonprofits. Interesting. I later created a nonprofit. I was so bullied by women when I was younger and I was suicidal because of it. And yet I
Hmm.
was able to flip it and build a community where hundreds of people, mainly women, can shine
Mm.
and have community and give back. I mean, I wouldn't have been, it's like, how does a diamond, coal turns to diamond? It's all those
Right.
cliches that are accurate. The
Right.
sand and the oil, it turns
Sure.
into the pearl and
Yeah.
all the things. But I think if we can step back from the emotional turmoil that we're in a situation and then simply ask ourselves, what if this is actually working for me?
Yeah, I'm curious for someone who is in an emotionally dark place or someone who is in the shit right
Yeah.
now. I'd love for you like pretend that you're coaching them. What would
Okay.
be like the top three questions or phrases or things that they should think about in order to kind of like wade through the crap?
Okay. So first of all, it would depend on who I'm talking to.
Of course.
Because certain people need a kick in the booty and
Hmm.
certain people need a lot of love and compassion because it depends on what the situation is. And so I want to preface that I wouldn't talk to everybody the same way
Right.
depending on what they're going through, right? Like if someone's
Of
dealing with the
course.
death of a loved one, I'm not going to be like, take extreme ownership. No,
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that. But some people, when they're holding themselves back a lot and they have a lot of excuses, I'm like, come on, let's
Yeah.
go. So this will be my broad stroke version of that.
Yeah.
Uh, so someone's really like in a really bad place. I think the hardest part when you're in a really bad place is, well, not the hardest part. You have to validate yourself and the experience. Right? So you have to validate, like, this is really hard. Let yourself feel it.
Mm.
And there's a certain amount of to what degree are you then indulging in it? To
Mm.
what degree are you cooked in and now you're making it worse and spinning in it? Right. So and maybe putting yourself more and more in a rabbit hole. Like someone who has like OCD tendencies like myself, you have to be careful how deep you go down that rabbit hole because then it could become paralyzing.
Yeah.
So you have to know yourself as far as what you're dealing with, right? Also, a lot of people, and especially in our culture, we're not taught to grieve. It's like, oh, I don't feel good. Let me take a pill. I don't,
Hmm.
where you're like, no, your loved one died. You should be sobbing. You should be on the
Yeah.
ground. It should suck. Like, and it should suck for a while
For
versus
sure.
I just need to act like everything's fine. And that's part of
Hmm.
why people have emotional illness and diseases and all sorts of issues because they're not having the emotions go through them and out. So if person is really in, I'd say first validate it, like validate your
Hmm.
experience, honor your feelings. And then when you've kind of gotten through that, because it's hard to like think when you're in the thick of emotion, then it's
Right.
about looking at, okay, what can I do? And where can I take responsibility? Now, sometimes life throws you curveballs. And I mean, there was like this awful thing where a woman was like on a subway and she's got stabbed to death. Like, I'm not
Mm.
saying she needs to take any extreme ownership of anything. She sat next to a person that never should have gotten out of jail. It's awful.
Right.
There are things that happen that are completely where you can't say, you know, I just shouldn't have taken the subway. I mean, maybe if you would
Right.
have like an intuitive knowing, like, and I didn't listen to my intuition, then maybe that's a lesson. But
Hmm.
but aside from things like that, it's what kind of responsibility can I take? And the thing that's a really hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, and myself included over the years, it's been acknowledging like not only do hurt people,
Mm.
but we teach people how to treat us. And if
Yeah.
we don't love ourselves enough, then we can tolerate abuse and dysfunction, and it actually at a certain point is our fault. Or because we didn't stop it. We didn't set a boundary. We didn't love ourselves enough to be like, I got to walk away.
Right.
That doesn't mean that that's easy. Again, it depends on the circumstances.
Of course.
But especially if you are dependent on them and have a small child or whatever the situation is. So
Right.
again, I'm prefacing this like super broad strokes.
For
Uh,
sure.
I think, then it's like, what can I do? Where can I take responsibility in the situation? Because that's the gem.
Hmm.
Because I believe that, the life school of it all. I mean, Oprah talks about life school, like, a lot of the big coaches, Tony Robbins talks about homeschool. Like, a lot of
Right.
them are about, like this. All these things are trying to prepare you and teach you. And this really amazing author, his name is Michael Brown, and he wrote a book called The Presence Process. It's very thick.
Hmm.
It's like if you're gonna do it, have fun, but you better do it. Like, do it right.
Okay.
Like, you can't drink. You gotta really do it, and you're gonna be triggered. And the whole point is that
Mm.
for this, I think it's a 3-month process. It's a long process. You're going to be triggered, and each time you're triggered, his whole point is don't kill the messenger. Get the
Mm.
message. So that thing that's bothering you is hitting on something that's older than that, that's older than that, that's older than that, that's rooted in my mom and dad abandoned me, or
Right.
I'm not enough, or whatever the thing is. So every time you're feeling triggered by something, which again is why in our society, when we're like, we want to label things as all bad, it's like a trigger is information,
Hmm.
you know? A
Right.
disrespect is a different thing, but I think a trigger in itself is not bad. A trigger helps us become aware of things. So
Absolutely.
So we get to look at that and then be like, what is this trying to inform in me? Because I found, and he talks about this in his book, but I found in my life as well, that life will keep throwing you similar curveballs from totally different directions and different people and different circumstances. And it will be obnoxious. It will be like the thing that you're struggling with will be on a billboard, or the thing that you're struggling with will pop up on your email, or the thing, and you're like, are you serious?
Right.
Like to wake you up to shift beyond it. And then
Right.
when you finally grow through it, grow bigger than it, when you finally move past it, it either doesn't show up, or when it shows up, you're just like, "Meh." Now,
Yeah.
again, it's easy to say that that's for someone who doesn't have like a lot of PTSD or a lot of like certain traumas, right? Right. So then you
Right.
get into brain health. Then you get into, people, if you have brain injuries, or if you have, issues actually in your brain, like people with PTSD, there's a certain markers in your brain, or if you've had certain concussions and things like that. Like
Hmm.
Dr. Amen talks all about brain health. And so that's a different thing, because sometimes what you're dealing with, and a lot of mental health issues that people are dealing with, are either their gut. So they're not
Hmm.
feeding microbiome and their microbes properly, which is increasing why they don't feel good for so
Yeah.
many reasons. And then also brain health and injury.
Hmm.
And you know this, I like to look at things from a multi-pronged approach. I look at it
Right.
like the mental, the emotional, the physical, absolutely. Because your physical being can totally change your state quickly. Tony Robbins talks
100%.
all the time. And then I like to look at it from the spiritual and the energetic. So I'm also a Reiki 2 practitioner. So I know that there is energy that we can tap into. It's just a matter of, do we choose to tap into it or not? or to
Right.
what. And we have a lot of distractions in Los Angeles, and we specifically have just in our phone. We have a lot
Hmm.
of distractions.
Well, I think that like I want to touch on a couple things that you said, and I appreciate and like very much acknowledge you calling out the privilege of being able to like be in a mental space where you can be like, okay, I can like sit with this and notice and process and have that time in that space to do that, because so many people, and I know some people that you work with, do not have that ability or that space. And I want to get to that in a second, like who you work with. But I think that the underlying thing here that we can all take away from this is that if you are in the same situation over and over and you are having the same trauma response or the same response over and over, all you can do is just notice. To even take that 2 seconds to just like notice, huh, this is how I'm feeling. This is where it sits in my body, is so incredibly important, because it's something where you may not have the ability, the capacity, the knowledge to process or deal with it right then, but hopefully there is space for that in the future. And I think that like our body, there's so many books about how our body holds different emotions and different, trauma, like the body keeps a score, where it's like your body knows what's going on and it will continue to hold on to things until you're able to focus on it and like let it go.
I do want to add two more things really fast.
Yeah.
That one, if you decide to let the beast not be so big, and
Hmm.
notice that if I change a habit, it'll change the circumstance. So let's say you're in an abusive relationship and you get out of the relationship and you're afraid, oh my God, what if I get in another abusive relationship? Well, the habit is A, self-love, because if you love yourself enough, you're not going to tolerate it.
Right.
B, it's learning to set boundaries and speak up. So B and
Hmm.
C. And so those are just habits.
Right.
So so when you whittle it down, it's not some big huge monster of I will always be miserable. It's
Hmm.
that can be a simple thing, or the simplicity of like gratitude when you're in a state. There are people in a hospital bed right now wishing they could have your problems.
Hmm.
Like they don't get to see their loved ones tomorrow.
Right.
So, not that we need to go around thinking that, but sometimes we need to think of an extreme thing to shake us out of, you know, the contractor was 2 hours late or whatever the thing that's
Right.
upset you. You're like, let's fix this problem. Or in the
Right.
grand scheme of problems, it's valid. Again, it's valid, a concern or a complaint, but is it dire like other circumstances, right? Is and the
For
scale
sure.
of 1 to 10, is it a 10? And then the other thing that's worth really thinking about, and I really think this is a key that I'm really focusing a lot with a lot of my different clients, especially when I see certain patterning,
Hmm.
is genetics, and looking at it from the fact that trauma is passed down generation to generation to generation unless it's fixed. And I don't know if you know
Right.
this, but it's an amazing study. So it's worth repeating for those that haven't heard about it. I don't remember the title of the study. I'd have to look it up. But basically there were these rats. It's terrible. They shocked them, but like it's not my study. I didn't do it, but
Hmm.
the information's interesting. They shocked these rats after smelling this smell. It was like smelled like almonds and cherries.
Hmm.
And these rats were then scared of that smell, of course. And so then they would have them smell that smell again, not shock them, and they'd run away. And so these rats were afraid of the smell. Well, then they had babies, and their babies who never were shocked would smell the smell, and they were afraid of it. Never been shocked.
Right.
Then their babies, who also had never had, so their grandbabies, never been
Yeah.
shocked, smell the smell, ran away. Then what's so incredible is that then their baby, so the grandchildren, they had babies through in vitro, IVF,
Mm.
and those babies were afraid of the smell. So sometimes what we're dealing with, you know, it can be, with your self-esteem, it can be with certain fear. Your body's trying to protect you. It's just sometimes
Right.
pain. And so sometimes those things don't belong to you, or
Hmm.
they don't fully belong to you, or you're going to have repeated patterns because that's part of your lesson plan. But it's
Right.
actually, because your grandmother dealt with XYZ in the war.
Yeah. There was a guest, I believe in season 2, Sarah Tomko, who talked about how she was always like deathly afraid of horses, I believe. And it was something where she like called her mother at one point, and they found out that like many generations back, a grandmother or grandfather had been kicked by a horse and ended up being having some catastrophic, and it was something where like she had never heard this story. It was not something that was ever talked to before, but like her, and she's a very spiritual person, and has a very colorful and active like spiritual life and inner life, and like it was something where like she knew instinctively that there was something in her
Yeah.
past lives that was related to this. I mean, I so believe in that. And I think that that's so valuable because we see these cycles that
Yeah.
people get trapped in, not because of them necessarily or their circumstance, but because of how they were born, where they were born into,
Yeah.
and just helping break those patterns, which is where I kind of want to transition a little bit to. You have like a lot of different organizations that you run and organize, but one in particular, the New Hollywood, is something where you work with women, single moms, and help them in a like transitionary period. Well, I'll just let you explain. I was going to say it's kind of like a like life coaching big sister program, but like on crack, because I feel like you are teaching actionable skills to
Yeah.
people and giving them real tools so that they can get jobs, find stable homes, break these generational patterns in order to set up a better life for their kids. And that's, having an 11-month-old myself, like it's so valuable because I constantly recognize the privilege that I have and
Yeah.
that my son has because having me as a mom. And I think that it's just so valuable for what you're doing. So I'd love for you to explain a little bit about the origin of that, and
Yeah.
then maybe share a couple stories of like how you've seen this transform people's lives.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, and a couple things, you know, because so many people in your past work so hard you're able to have that luxury, right?
For sure. Yeah,
So,
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So we have to be so grateful for the family members that came before us, because not all of us come from royalty. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's somebody that had to like figure it all out, right? Um,
Right.
so we're so lucky that we have that. And I am a big believer in, my nonprofit's called The New Hollywood. It's a
Mm-hmm.
501(c)(3) nonprofit. It has been around for 20 years as of January.
Mm-hmm.
Is very exciting. And, we've done everything to support, with mentorship and supporting just people to be able to be their best, to rise higher and shine brighter and give back. And this specific program that we're fundraising for, and is our main program right now, it's called the TNH Accountability Program. And we're the alumni program for Harvest Home. And Harvest Home takes homeless moms off the streets and helps them as they segue from homeless to being housed, and dealing with being pregnant and then having their baby. We are officially their alumni program. So when these women are then housed and have a job, we come in because before that, they're still in such survival mode. They're not ready to like dive into the vastness of what this is.
For
Um,
sure.
we, we have a selective group of ladies that we work with, and because they have to be ready for it. They have to be like, I'm willing to do the work. And that's what's really great is like, these women, they want to do the reading. They want to do that. They're like, we want to. Well, please show us the ropes. Like they want to get off government assistance. They want to like
Right.
really thrive and have their children thrive. And so it is big sister on crack. Like it is very
Mm-hmm.
physical and strategic. And they have most of them go to therapy or have therapy through the different social services, but this isn't that. And as someone I've tried a million therapies over the years, and I could tell you which ones are great, which ones are not, why, blah 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 blah. I've dealt with, over the years I've had the luxury of working with lots of different types of modalities. Um, this is not, let's just hear your story and we're going to, indulge in it for 6 months to 2 years. It's okay. This
Right.
is what you're going to deal with. This is how you get from here to here. Here's how you fast track. Here's how you do this. And I think there's really a big urgency in for these ladies specifically, because one, there's going to be a huge change in jobs due to AI. Um,
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things we talked about last night when we had our monthly call with them. I was like,
Hmm.
there's some people stating there'll probably be a 25% job loss in the next 5 to 7 years due to AI.
Yep.
So most of them have not a lot of education, or the education that they're getting, I'm like, that is not a relevant career anymore. And I've literally said that. I'm
Hmm.
like, I would not pursue that degree. That degree,
Yep.
there's not any work. Or the people I know who have that degree cannot get work. Like,
Right.
not that you can't
For
be an
sure.
outlier, but like you have to be strategic. You're a mom, and you're the only you're the breadwinner. So we'll get really strategic about that, as well as, a lot of government funding is shifting rapidly. And I've said I would assume, if I were you, that most government assistance will be gone in the next 3.5 years. So, or it will
Hmm.
drastically shift. So like, we're like, okay, how do we help you figure out just survival, so you can, but then how do you get ahead? And so
Right.
it's everything from, here's how you deal with your debt. All right, you have debt. This is what you do, XYZ, to be able to manage your debt. Here's how you can budget. I mean, we even have it where I have an alliance with Natalie Pace, where they learn how to invest, how to set up their kids'
Hmm.
college fund, how they can learn how to deal with that so that they can gain financial literacy. So we have that
For
arm of
sure.
it. A lot of them struggle with severe health issues from being in a food desert, from never learning how to cook, from eating processed foods all the time. And so I see that. I'm like, well, you can't go and be awesome and be the breadwinner. If you get sick, you can't pay rent. You
Right.
don't have a surplus. You can't afford to be sick. So you have to focus on self-care more. You have to focus on meal prep more. You have to learn nutrition. So we
Right.
set up a thing this last year with a Free Dominguez, who's a former celebrity chef, and she's a big functional nutritionist. And she taught them how to cook healthy, really delicious food, same price point as fast food, using an Instapot, and
Hmm.
how to meal prep. And we made that evergreen into a course for future people that are in our program. Like, when I see what they need, I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you need to understand this, and then you can elevate. Or, to kind of go into the stories. I mean, I've had women where, you are who you surround yourself with. So some of these ladies have just been surrounded by chaos and people going in and out of jail and people dying, and just a lot of them come from the orphanage, the orphanages or foster care systems, or been human trafficking victims. Like, so
Hmm.
we're getting a whole different demographic that are dealing with a lot of chaos and a lot of dysfunction in their past and also around them. And
Right.
so I've had women where, I would say, the father of her child, who did not want to pay child support, was harassing her so severely that she was suicidal.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, you cannot do that. Like, you can't go,
Hmm.
like, your baby needs you, like, cause he didn't want to pay child support. So he and his other girlfriend decided to, like, harass. It was just so horrible. And
Right.
fortunately, she picked up, but she started drinking again, and she's formerly an
Hmm.
addict, drinking. So, I mean, I remember being on the phone with her, or it was FaceTime, and I said, I need to watch you dump all your alcohol out. And so
Hmm.
she did, and then she started to go back to, what she needed to do. And we got her in conversation with a lawyer and with police, so she could understand her rights.
Hmm.
Was the best way forward with this man who has no integrity.
Right.
So like, we helped her problem solve instead of being stuck in the chaos of the problem,
Yeah.
and move and all the things that she needed to do. There was another woman who, when I got jumped on a private with her, really beautiful, lovely woman, and it wasn't until midway through that she admitted she was in a severely abusive relationship with a man who had hospitalized her multiple times with abuse. And then it became, all right, you can't write any of this down, but this is what you're gonna do when he's out of
Hmm.
town now.
Hmm.
Like, and now what's so cool is braiding hair, and she has her own business, and we're helping her with the marketing of her business so that it looks professional. And I'm like, here's how you build a flyer, girl. All right, this is
Right.
how you send it out. This is how you market it. This is how
Yeah.
you have to do X amount of social and da da da. And we have coaches that, everything from, we have people that have domestic violence in a background. We have people who have come from being a single mom
Hmm.
and figuring it out and really thriving. We have I have a corporate business coach who also has done, helps with like LinkedIn, resume, cover letters, just the etiquette. Like, if you don't come from a family that is supportive of you, or you have no family, you're not learned, like, hey, a thank you letter goes a long way to getting a job or keeping a
Right.
job. What
For
are those
sure.
little things? Um, and even dealing with small things like hey, you're going to feel really responsive and triggered when you feel disrespected at work, but you can't just react because you'll get fired,
Right.
so we need to deal with that. But the root of that is because you were abused so much in your marriage.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then they're like, that's why I do that. I'm like, yeah. That's the why. So we just get to change this. And so they're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So these ladies are smart. Some of them are legitimate geniuses.
Yeah.
Um, and it's cool because they're like teaching their kids about gratitude. And so it goes everything from like little, really tangible to like the more energetic, airy fairy of it. Like, let's do it. Like right now we're in a gratitude challenge. So they're like reading the magic with the other groups. And,
Right.
and a lot of them are doing it alongside their kids. And so
Yeah.
it's just, we try to keep it fun and not just like, oh my God, the world's falling apart. But there is an urgency now, and we have a big fundraiser that we're doing in October, the first Sunday of October, and it's at the beach, and it is a silent disco, so it'll be fun. We'll all be dancing, and then there'll be, like, some coffee so people can go take off their things and talk to each other and have coffee, and then people will be dancing. It's very family
Yeah.
friendly, but we're wanting to take it to the next level. We have a bunch of ladies who wanna be in the program, and we need funds to be able to expand it so that we can help more and more of this demographic. And I think, you know, in LA, we have a homeless issue or an
Yeah.
unhoused issue, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think housing people is solving the problem.
Right.
I think it's part of the solution. But if
Yeah.
someone doesn't know how to manage their money, or they are not even willing to look at their debt because it feels so scary, or they're in
Right.
such a state of not feeling good because of trauma or food or whatever the things are, there's other needs to break those cycles since so many
100%.
are in and out of having been homeless throughout their life.
Right. Yeah.
I think having housing is good, but I don't think it's the answer. I think the answer is helping these people change the patterning so that then they can move beyond that.
For sure. Yeah, there's a program called CASA. I don't know if
Mhm.
know about that with like foster kids, and a friend of mine is in the CASA program, and that's like a program run by the state, or maybe it's federal, but definitely run by the state, where an individual person is assigned to one foster child and helps them do the basic things like get a driver's license, sign up for a phone, like all, and the
Right.
amount of red tape that my friend has to go through in order to help this foster child, and then the amount of, this child is just unfortunately like left behind by the system in
Yeah.
so many ways, like,
Yeah.
and so it's really admirable to have, and necessary, so crucial to have organizations that are outside of the system that are trying to help, because unfortunately, as you mentioned, like with our current administration, and things are just going to get worse, programs are going to continue to be cut, and so it really is reliant on people outside of the system in order to like help our community, because you're right, like there's so many unhoused people in Los Angeles, and who is helping them? Like it's not, there is not programs or support really for them in the ways like what you're doing. And so I think that it's just really
Yeah.
admirable, and very valuable to the community with what you're doing. So
Thank
thank you.
you. Well, and thank you. And I think also we all know how resistant we are to change. And that may
Hmm.
be like, I should have less coffee or whatever, right? Like, and it could just be, oh,
Right.
hard to
For
change.
sure.
And that's
Yeah.
not dire, right?
Right.
That's not dire. But so what the need, and I think people think like, oh, well, it'll be a 6 month program. I'm like, no, this takes years of
Yeah.
shifting and growing and backtracking and moving forward. And then suddenly it's like, okay, I have my sea legs and I'm no longer in that same poverty mentality. I'm no longer making choices of lack. I'm able to continue. I'm not sabotaging myself because I don't believe I'm worthy
Right.
subconsciously, not consciously. I mean, people do that who have all sorts of great things, sabotage it. And so imagine if you have as much trauma as some of these ladies who've told me that the trauma is absurd. Where I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't believe that. And we originally started working with foster kids, and it wasn't the right demographic because they didn't realize there wasn't the urgency to change
Hmm.
for all of
Hmm.
them. So, because they didn't realize how screwed they were. And I
Hmm.
just felt it was so heartbreaking watching these kids that were like not being woken up to go to school. And they
Hmm.
had to wake up at 3, 4 in the morning to take multiple buses to go to school. I'm like, of course you don't want to go to school.
Right.
And you're 14
Right.
and you have no one waking you up and you're
Right.
away from your parents. And, clearly that wasn't a good situation. And now you're in this
Right.
community and you're not getting the like mom, big sister, what you need is a hug thing.
Right. Right.
What you need is, and at that age where you're already not trusting. So it is really needed because to make any change for anyone is hard, but to make
Hmm.
massive change, to break cycles of poverty it's a changing of a lot of different habits. And
For
that
sure.
takes time.
Yeah. So I want to cycle back to you for a second, because obviously we've been talking about how, how much you do for the community and how like a lot of this must weigh on you in some capacity. And so I'm curious what tools that you have in order to be able to like focus on your career, focus on your son, focus on, just like what lights you up
Uh-huh.
when you're surrounded by a lot of just like heaviness.
Well, yes and no, because
Hmm.
the knowing these circumstances is heavy, but watching them move forward and through them is really inspiring.
Mm.
So, yeah, sometimes I've gotten stuff where I'm like, "What's happening?" But it's also not my journey. I'm like, it's not my
Hmm.
responsibility like, I can't solve it for them. They are the only ones who can solve it for themselves. Otherwise, they're just gonna go back
Right.
and have the same situation happen again in another form.
Right.
So, again, it's not enabling, it is literally is that old, like, "We're showing you how to fish,"
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
so, to be cliche, but I think, that's really inspiring to see people wanna grow, willing to grow, and then going and saying inspiring things, I mean, at the benefit that we had, listening to the woman give her Destiny give her testimonial about how she handled the loss of her mother and didn't go into bad patternings and how she had to get out of a job that was abusive, and it was legitimately abusive because I remember being on the phone with her and I was like, "That's crazy. You need to get out of there."
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, "Nobody in their right mind would take that job and stay there." And watching her, like, rise through it, it's like, "Wow, that's cool." Like, her daughter
Hmm.
will struggle the same way that she did, and that was really inspiring. And yeah, I have a couple different communities. I have my main mastermind group that I've run for 20 years as well. I have our Thriving community, which is for female actresses and people in the entertainment industry that I run with Elizabeth Boykovich. And so within the Manifesting Your Mission community, I don't know, I think by talking about all this stuff, I have to be positive, more positive.
Mm.
I don't have moments where I'm like, ugh, or exhausted but it forces me to use the tools that I already know work,
For sure.
and I think, I do a lot, like I said, energy work and things like that are in my back pocket. That helps.
Hmm.
It does help that I know how to do Reiki. It does help,
Yeah.
when I am feeling like, oh gosh, I'm hitting like I'm exhausted to say, okay, I know I don't need to sprint now. As you know, I'm good with time management because that's part of the
Hmm. Right.
within guidebook and all of that.
Yep.
I gauge it. I really do gauge it. And as a mom, that changes week to week because sometimes your kid's
For
sick
sure.
and you have to flip what you can do. But I do think like not spending as much time on my vices
Hmm.
and spending more time in the moment and trying to just savor those like yummy moments with my son or savor the good things. I mean, there's so much in the world I want to like go fix.
Yeah.
If anything, that brings me more down. Like when I read
Yeah.
the news and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Why are people crazy? Why won't people just listen to each other and,
Yeah.
come up with a reasonable solution for this or whatever? Um, I have a theory. We all just need to learn that aliens are real and then we'll all hate aliens. And then all of our collective hate will just go toward
Oh
aliens.
my God.
And then we'll all be like, oh, kumbaya, because we're all
Right.
earthlings,
Hmm. Yeah. Let's
And then
all unite under one belief.
then we all
something.
hate the aliens, and all of our
Right.
hate anger will go toward them, and I don't know. That
I love it.
that's
Uh,
the theory of how we create world peace, is we just
I
all need
love
to be
it.
scared of aliens.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Sorry,
kidding.
aliens.
Sorry, aliens. I'm not really nice.
Yeah. I'm sure they're down there like, fuck
What are
you.
they doing?
I always love to end with three random questions. So
Okay,
rapid fire questions, answer whatever comes to mind.
okay.
Number one is, what is a short unknown fact about you?
Ooh, what is a short, unknown fact about me? I mean, this is just popping up as super random.
Great.
When I was a young kid and I would play, and I was a tomboy, so I would hang out with my friend Nate. We were, we'd always play animals, or I don't know. I was always like the leopard in the tree or whatever, cheetah. He would be the
Mm-hmm.
wolf. And my brother was younger. My brother was always like, I'm going to be the rabbit. And we're like, the rabbit. And we'd always eat the rabbit, like, but I think that's like an older sibling, younger brother.
Of course.
Why did you choose a rabbit? Like, of course, we're predators. We're going to eat you.
Right. That's amazing. I love it. What is one thing you wish you enjoyed more?
Mm. One of the things I'm working on, because, I'm obsessive with always fine tuning,
Mm-hmm.
a kick out of it. One of the things I wish I enjoyed more is I'm really working on it, slowing down and savoring when I eat.
Mm,
Really enjoy and savor the food more fully. Like I do, but I know I can do it more because I tend to get in my head
right.
and I know when I do that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a symphony. It's like everything, especially with good food.
Right.
And then other times it feels like I just need fuel, or
Right.
I need to move on to the next thing, and I'm like, no, 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 no,
Yep.
no. I know you to absorb more nutrients when you rest and digest and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
Wish I wish, and I'm working on savoring and slowing down so I really can enjoy food more.
That, that's a really good one. I definitely need to do that as well. And let's see. I have like a list of like 50 and I just like choose
All right.
randomly. What movie, book, or TV show changed your life?
Ooh, you know what? Well, there's, oh my God. I could tell you one for each. What movie really changed me was Kate Blanchett and Elizabeth.
Love that movie.
She was just exquisite.
Hmm.
I mean, not that that's not surprising because she's always exquisite, but just the character and the journey and being forced into a leadership role and then having to navigate that and then being able to rise from it. I was so moved. I don't know how historically accurate that entire movie is, but I love the journey, and how she portrayed it was just gorgeous, as an actress, and it
Yeah.
was such a good movie. But the book that really transformed me, it was a big aha and awakening for me, and it is actually the first book that we read in the new Hollywood Accountability Program, and it was the first book that I ever got from actually the first time I did Reiki when I think I was around, I don't know, early 20s, 1920,
Mm,
um, was the book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and it's about
mm,
metaphysics, and it's very simple, and it just really makes you aware of how your thoughts create your reality.
mm.
And and that everything's boiled down to a thought, and that you can always change your thoughts. And
Interesting.
it's a gorgeous book. And she is like one of the pioneers in the whole metaphysics self-help world.
Mm,
And that book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, it's just a beautiful, simple book. And the ladies in the program who, when they read it and really take it in, a lot of them have really been like, "Oh wow, I never thought that I had anything to do with my circumstances, or
mm.
how I think or feel about something can change what happens to or around me."
Yeah,
So it's really,
that's really cool.
yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna go read
Yeah.
that. Being here, I feel like we could have talked for, I have like so many more questions for you. But I'd like to,
Yeah.
keep it rapid fire, but thank you for being here.
Of course, maybe we'll do another episode one day.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you again so much for listening to this episode of the More Than You See podcast. I hope that you enjoyed listening to Brianna as much as I enjoyed chatting with her. There really is like so many other questions that I have for her, but maybe we'll just have to have her back on the podcast in the future. So definitely let me know if that's something that you would like. Again, reach out to me and to us on social media. And if you wouldn't mind, it would do me the greatest honor if you could please tell your friend about this show. Just mention it to someone who you think might be interested in hearing about the, struggles and triumphs of different actors and creatives. And it really does help spread the word of mouth. So please just like share it with one person. And while you're at it, maybe leave us a review. I know this is like shameless plug here, but I'm going for it. Before we go, I would like to leave you with one good piece of news. This is a new segment that we're doing where we just like to leave every episode with a little bit of positive news. And what we are going to talk about today is, did you know that cheerful music could help people get over car sickness? There was a study that they did in China where they basically simulated people, like had people who got car sick, had them simulated that feeling by being in a car and moving a car in a specific way so that it disrupted their eardrums and their sight and all of the things that cause motion sickness. And then they played different types of music, and the people who listened to cheerful, happy music actually got over their car sickness much, much faster than people who are listening to like sad emo music. So it's just like a little tidbit, something that is pretty interesting. And yeah, this is maybe something that you will learn for your next road trip. Anyways, just silly, but I thought I would leave you with that little story today. Again, thank you so much for being here. It really does mean so much to have you such an active part of the community. Please remember to be kind to yourself. Remember that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week.